In a small, quiet village nestled between the mountains and the rice paddies of the northern Philippines, there lived a farmer named Mateo. His skin was bronzed by the relentless sun, and his hands bore the calluses of years of toil. Mateo was poor, but he was proud, and his connection to the land ran deep. His family had farmed the same plot for generations, and though times were often tough, Mateo took solace in the rhythm of the seasons. The land was unforgiving. Typhoons swept through the region each year, often destroying his crops just as they were ready to harvest. Despite the harsh conditions, Mateo remained steadfast. He rose before dawn, his feet sinking into the cool mud as he tended to the rice fields, planting each seedling with care. His family depended on his work, and though his yields were meager, he knew that hard work was his only option. One particularly difficult year, the rains failed to come. The dry season lingered far too long, and the soil cracked beneath the heat of the sun. Mateo's rice fields, which once swayed in the wind like a golden sea, withered before his eyes. His family had little left to eat, and their debts to the local merchant began to pile up. Desperate, Mateo walked to the town market to sell what little he had left, a few chickens and the last of the root crops from his small garden. As he sat on the dusty road, waiting for a buyer, he overheard two men talking about a nearby town where the fields were irrigated by a river. They spoke of how the farmers there were able to grow crops year-round, unaffected by the whims of the weather. That night, Mateo lay awake thinking. The next morning, he gathered his few remaining pesos and set out on a journey to the town the men had spoken of. The walk took 2 days, and by the time Mateo arrived, his feet were blistered, and his body was weary. But what he saw filled him with hope. Lush green fields stretched as far as his eyes could see, fed by a river that wound its way through the valley. Mateo approached an older farmer, a man whose face bore the same marks of time and labor as his own. "How do you manage to grow so much?" Mateo asked. The old man smiled and pointed to the river. "We share the water. Each farmer takes only what they need. It's hard work to build the canals, but once done, it makes all the difference." Mateo returned to his village with a newfound sense of determination. He gathered the few farmers who were left, most of them as poor and desperate as he was. Together, they worked day and night, digging canals from a nearby stream that they had once overlooked. It was slow work, but Mateo's resolve never wavered. Months passed, and finally, water began to trickle through the channels they had dug. The villagers planted their crops cautiously at first, afraid the water might disappear as quickly as it had come. But the stream flowed steadily, nourishing the soil and the seeds within it. For the first time in years, Mateo's rice fields grew tall and strong. The harvest that year was abundant, and for the first time in a long while, Mateo's family did not go hungry. Word of the irrigation spread to nearby villages, and soon more farmers came to learn from Mateo and his neighbors. The community flourished, bound together not by wealth, but by the strength of their shared labor and hope. Mateo remained poor by most standards, but in his heart, he knew he was rich in ways that mattered most. His land, his family, and his community thrived, and for a man who had once stood on the brink of despair, that was enough.